What's up, you guys? It's Jay here again for another video, and today we are reading I Fell in Love with the Reaper. Yes, we are doing a dramatic reading of I Fell in Love with the Reaper because it's one of my favorite books online right now, and I just had to make a video for it because it's so amazing. And unfortunately, they're updating it a week at a time, so we're only on chapter 20 right now. So I'm going to be reading all the way up to chapter 20, and yeah, let's get started. But before we get started, I just want to say that this video was brought to you by Public K and Team Venom on Tumblr, because they are the ones who helped me make this video, and they're the ones who are the ones responsible for the chaos that is I Fell in Love with the Reaper. So let's get started reading the book. Chapter 1. It was cold in the room I was laying in. The floorboards creaking in the distance didn't help me relax any more than I really needed to, and the regret was starting to soak in, as I realized that the atmosphere around me that I was in was actually kind of perfect. I hesitated for a second and then reached in my pocket to check my phone, unlocking it before it got in my side of vision. I read through all of me and Derek's texts that led me to this moment where we were in right now. I was laying in the center of an altar, in casted circle drawn on the floor with white chalk, alone, in an abandoned house miles from where I lived. Do it if you dare. The last text said from Derek. It only took about 3 minutes to respond. After I told him I'm here, that was my assumption that I could just go right in. Only after realizing it was an abandoned house, I realized in the silence what exactly was going on. So I accepted it. I laid in the center of the casted circle and waited to be the living sacrifice. I never met Derek before. Although I met him on the internet, we grew close, and he invited me to come over to meet him for the first time. Maybe I was naive. But the one thing I knew for sure was that as a gay 16-year-old, I only knew I would never find love. No one ever told me that. But somehow I knew it in the back of my head. And when Derek came into the picture, he said all the right things. That's how I knew I wanted to meet him. It was kind of strange. As it was happening, I knew exactly what was happening, but only while simultaneously going through it in a daze. His touch, as his hands crawled down my pants and grabbed me by my now throbbing dick. I took a deep breath, and as his other hand reached up and roughly raised my shirt, I started playing with my right nipple. It all turned me on, and yet the eeriness in the air did not go away. I was blindfolded and promised I would be okay if I didn't scream. I would be allowed to go through the ritual without my hands being bound. I was feeling ecstasy and complete engulfed in the mystery of what was happening with my body. Then my thoughts were interrupted by the rough grasp of my pants as Derek roughly pulled my pants and underwear, exposing my dick. It was now full-on erection and began to suck me off. Whispers began to fill the air, and as I was starting to become convinced that that we were no longer alone, I screamed 2 seconds too late. I was being stabbed. I grasped at the womb as I was still being continuously stabbed, but in the chest now. Don't worry. I won't go into the gory details, but it did hurt like hell. It was too dark and too late to scream for help. I knew what I had done. And if you're asking me if it was worth it, it was. Other note. Thanks. There you go. Chapter 1 is now out. I hope you guys are into the horror. But don't worry. Even if you think I'm giving it all away, the horror, it couldn't get any better than this. I have so much more in store. This book was published in the summer of 2023. No promoted rated R horror and not suitable for children under the age of 19. Thank you. Chapter 2. I lay lifeless as blood began to fill my eyes, as if my body found an instant emergency to make out tears to cry out as I lay helpless on the floor bleeding out. Okay, I wasn't dead yet, and I know what you're thinking. I bet he wished he was dead. Well, yeah, smartass. I was a gay goth teenager walking right into a horror massacre. It's what I deserved. And when I was supposed to see the darkness, instead, I saw God. He was beautiful, like a pure bright white light, and I had 4 arms, like 2 normal human arms and 2 more in place of wings. He resembled the lion. Somehow, and you knew as you grew closer to the image that drew you in, also the sun. He said nothing until he spread his arms out as if gesturing to bask at all there was to see, even though there was nothing at the same time. But then he abruptly pointed a single finger in my face and tells me in a bold, booming man voice and a whisper at the same time, "You are not done," he says. "You have so much more ahead of you. You must return." And then I woke up. Author's notes. Thank you so much. OMG. Is this shit famous already or no? Please leave a good review on Google. Please. And a lot of you want to address the sex scene in chapter 1, but nah. Just keep hating, because chances are you'll read it anyway. Up at 4 a.m. to write this chapter. Chapter 3. I remember climbing out of the mud and clawing my way onto the nearby sidewalk. Before I could even climb to my feet, the thick muddy slime drenched me. It was all in my hair, in my lungs, and when I did finally come to my feet, my shoes, of course, were gone. I looked back into the mud puddle, if you want to call it that. It haunted me. Alone at the idea that I crawled out of it, knowing no matter how deep down I tried, I couldn't remember anything. Knowing that pit of mud was endless inside. I walked home regretting every second of it. Not knowing how to explain what happened. Not knowing how to keep my head together, let alone convince someone I was right. A few days had passed and I didn't know what to say. I ran out of this to say things to say to my friends. We were all smiling and laughing, being loud on the bus to high school, but me? I was secretly feeling so alone lately. It wasn't because I had walked right out of my own murder, but it was pretty difficult for me knowing I survived and no one knew. I even lost the point as to why even bother with friends at this point. I was dead, and they were alive. They didn't need me anymore. It kind of felt like looking outside of a window at the closet, at the closest person to you, even when you didn't want to. Being hungry, that is. I stumbled inside and regrettably marched to my room when I couldn't even get my mom's attention, who was sitting on the front couch watching First 48. Ironically, I grabbed clothes off the floor of my closet and crept quietly to the bathroom to take a shower. Author's note: it's been a whole month, and honestly, I can't believe that my book is getting released every week and people are actually reviewing it. Well, anyways, thank you so much for all the good reviews. Next week's chapter will be more about the main character, if you're wondering. Okay, bye. Chapter 4. I was hungry, and when food became less and less appealing to me, there was nothing I could do but starve. I laughed to myself as I sat at the edge of my bed. Is this what it felt like to die? I asked in a huff, almost in tears. I couldn't say that it was the hardest thing I ever had to do, but I had to figure out what was wrong with me. I had to eat. And little did I know, as I was walking under the midnight moon, which was barely shining tonight, unusual on a regular California night, but tonight I was focused and feeling more grim than normal. My phone was blowing up, but I ignored it. I didn't care. And like a flash of pain in my lower back, something knocked me off my feet, causing me to fly forward almost 3 or 4 yards in a blinding light coming from behind me. I crawled to my feet with the aching pain in my neck that wanted me to stay laying on the floor. There was a problem wearing all black ripped jeans. There was a person wearing all black ripped jeans and a pair of dusty old combat boots standing in front of an old 1997 Charger with the door wide open, and the person standing in front of the headlight's mouth was wide open. I didn't know what to say. The car should have killed me, and it caught me by surprise. The only thing I could sensibly imagine was, "That should have killed me," I whispered. Letting out word vomit was far beneath me, but I hated a lot of people that loved to talk just to talk. It was all I could think. The person came running to my now standing body. It was a tall male, about 6 feet tall, with long black hair he had gelled back into a messy mohawk that you could tell he did after a long night of adventures. He was pale, and every feature about him seemed elongated, handsome, and he smelled like mint. "It's okay, you don't have to stand up," he huffed in a panic. I can drive you to the hospital," he said, almost talking to himself, like he had a good idea. Honestly, I couldn't think. The smell of his boyish charm coming from the cologne only sprayed on his neck was appealing and almost blinding of the pain. Why was he standing so close to me? I'm actually okay," I whispered, not thinking about what he would say or think or what he would react. But when I looked him in the eyes, he became calm. I knew then I could smell his blood. It was loud, right over the pain of my stomach, and I knew then what I wanted to eat. When he didn't react to my single sentence, I gave in and rolled my eyes. I pretended to faint, and only after a quick gasp, he caught me in his arms, giving me a strong whiff of his cologne, as if I needed it. It turns out he was rushing me to the back seat of his raggedy-ass Charger. He was talking to himself almost in a haze. I realized I was dizzier than I thought, but when he was talking out loud, not to himself, but to me. My name is Charlie. My friends call me Charles. It's gonna be okay. I'm gonna take you straight to the hospital. I'll tell them everything that happened. Oh God, you're gonna be okay. Gently laying me in the back seat. And at the perfect time, I looked at him in the eyes, and he freezes, noticing his arms wrapped around me in a romantic way. Silence. Then he muttered to himself, and before a second could pass, I was pressing my lips against his. I felt his body relax as our lips locked. It was undeniable in the air that I had him exactly where I wanted him. We opened our eyes at the same time, and our eyes locked. There was a moment of silence until I broke it, whispering to him, It's okay, I confirmed. My name is, and before I could finish the sentence, the faint feeling of the pain in my neck and lower back took over me, and I passed out. When I woke up, I was in my own bed. Just drive me home, I whispered in his ear. I officially woke up having flashbacks from last night, which was officially the weirdest night of my life. And that's saying something, seeing how I got sacrificed last Friday night. I stood to my feet, climbing out of my bed to go to my bathroom. Then I knew it. Trust me, as a gay boy, you know it when the morning after, because you're so in places where you can't tell people in an everyday conversation and get proud of what you did last night. The soreness becomes a kind of trophy. Trust me, I know. I remember the handsome boy in a flash of memory from last night, his cologne, his charming smile, his clothes, and his tattoos and long hair. I had sex last night. The mystery boy and me laid in the back seat of his old 1997 Charger and had sex. I had sex with someone I didn't even know, which was weird for somebody like me, but it was more the fact that we met, because he literally hit me with this car. I smiled to myself, remembering he dropped me off at sunrise. When will I see you again? He asked me before I smiled to him and got out of the car. I didn't know exactly what to say. We laughed to ourselves like little kids, each smiling out the window the whole way home. I know. There's a college party this Saturday. I should come and pick you up, he suggested, as he hesitated to look up at me. When he did, our eyes locked, and as I confirmed to him without words, "Sure," I said after dancing away, without a second of hesitation, or giving him a single second to say anything else. I was gone. Saturday? Let's be real. You're not invited to the goth kids party. Author's note. What exactly do you mean I haven't even described the main character? I'm updating this like every week, and I'm doing it, and you can read it for free. The least you could do is leave me a good review. The protagonist is a gay boy, okay? That's the only thing about him that is true, or something like that. Don't bother me with your stupid ass untrue ideas. Thank you. Chapter 5. We walked around the huge driveway, down the sidewalk, into the door, which was open, blasting corny goth music, and people crowded just barely inside to fit the already huge house. I was going to suggest we hang out around the kitchen before we step past the threshold into the loud music, but then I blacked out and don't remember what happened next. I woke up in the back seat of Charles' car as he was driving. He was talking to himself out loud, asking, "Why does this keep happening?" And I could tell from his voice alone he was so worried. I closed my eyes, wishing I didn't have to face him and what happened. As well, whatever I am, I had to face that, and I couldn't make any more mistakes. Not until I decided on what I wanted to do now. But now that I was dead, when I did wake up, he quickly pulled over. I immediately get out of the car and then to the passenger seat in one quick motion. Completely shocked, he didn't say anything. Just started the car and we drove. We drove basically to nowhere important, as I hesitantly explained. "What happened?" he asked after a long moment of driving. Nothing but the flashing streetlights passing by as we drove. I can't enter a house unless I've been invited," I tell him hesitantly. "I walked into the house, so I got hurt." "But why? It doesn't make sense," he says. I could tell he didn't want me to hurt me, but either way, he was going to get down to the bottom of this. "So you're a vampire?" he asks hesitantly. "No," I tell him. I didn't know how to answer all these intense questions, but I knew soon I would have to say it. "Let me guess. You're some kind of zombie?" he asked, more annoyed with the dancing around the words. "I'm a succubus," I whispered. "Holy shit," he exclaims. "You're a demon succubus," he screams. I didn't know what to say exactly, but as I sat there fidgeting with my hands, I felt his energy fuming. Neither one of us said anything. "So you're like fucking Jennifer's body," he screamed as he started to pick up speed. I didn't know what to say. Author's note. Thank you so much. If you didn't know, this book is the first of a series called the Reaper's Love series. Please give me good reviews and help me get enough reviews so that they put my book on Goodreads. I'm not perfect at anything, but I've personally been updating this profile perfectly for a month and a half. Please confirm. Am I a god? Yes or no? Haha. Chapter 6. "It's not funny," I pouted as we sat together under a tree. I had picked an apple from the tree and we sat down under it to watch the sunrise and rest. "It is though," he laughs, covering his mouth as he laughs. "You think you're Jennifer's body. Have you ever seen that movie?" I coughed, trying not to laugh, as he joked yet again about Jennifer's body. "You're an idiot. I'm a boy, and Jennifer was a literal girl," I said seriously. "Yeah, but you called it a succubus. Isn't that what she was, though? Didn't she get sacrificed and didn't die?" he asked annoyingly. I didn't know what to say, so I said nothing with the memory of the scene when she calls herself a god. It fucking sucks, okay? I'm hurting because I should be dead. Meanwhile, you're cracking jokes. And plus, I'm so hungry, I can't even think. But I want revenge. I almost start crying. Okay. He starts to calm me down. He rubs my back, and when I look at him, we make eye contact, and I felt inclined to kiss him. So I did. And when I did, he leaned in. Don't get me wrong. I love the attention, and I love how gently he moans when he's enjoying himself. Especially as a gay boy. We don't get the attention we often need more often than none. And I think as a gay boy, fighting to get what you deserve isn't wrong. We as gay boys are like magic. Rarely seen, and some don't believe in, but we are here. So it's okay that Charles was gay. I liked him more that way. And in my world, we deserved each other. Until I put him in danger being between all of this. I knew then what happened at that party. I had to push him away. Fighting for what you deserve isn't wrong, you guys. Author's notes. Fighting for what you deserve isn't wrong, you guys. Jeez. Don't hate me because he will be turning more people gay, and that's okay. You guys, next week chapter will be so good, I promise. Just leave me a good review before next week. You'll love it, I promise. Chapter 7. After hours of searching for what it could be, what I could be, we finally gave up. Not a single sentence or article to give us the clue. Charlie laughs. Well, at least we know that you can keep it a secret. Well, besides me. He jokes. But yet again, I was uninterested. So we decided to go hang out and hopped in Charlie's car and left. When I figured out where we were going, I was kind of excited. But I couldn't tell Charlie that. We parked our car in the mall parking lot and walked inside the huge building. We walked around but didn't go into any stores. I could tell we were getting closer to my favorite store. And then all that changed as we walked, and my stomach was starting to hurt again. After so long of not eating, I couldn't take it. Then I started to smell the people. They smelled just like a house filled with the air of a warm cooked meal. But why though? Was there something here I could eat? I let go of Charlie's hand for a second and whispered in his ear, I'm starting to hurt again. It's my stomach. He looked me in my eyes and we rushed back to the parking lot. But wait, I say before he can start. What about Hot Topic? I asked. After hearing myself in another smell, I knew I couldn't hold back. And we should just leave, but at the same time, I didn't want to let it go that easy. We have to get you out of here. It'll be okay, maybe next time. He answers, rushing me through the automatic doors. I was so sad. Not being able to be around people was weird, and I didn't know why. I couldn't hurt anyone. I knew my own strength, but at the same time I was starving and couldn't find anything that I wasn't throwing back up. So we left to go for a drive. When we were home, I had to ignore the disappointment just so Charles wouldn't notice. But when I couldn't anymore, I think it made him a little sad. but we both ignored it while we watched The Walking Dead on Netflix, and it hit me. In class, we learned about mythology for one day. They taught us about Norse mythology. It was something to do with a reaper, and I couldn't quite remember, so I jumped up and told Charles to come with me. We ran up the stairs, and I grabbed his hand and got back to my laptop. I quickly searched for Norse gods of death in the search engine. You think you're some kind of god? He asked me, confused. No. I think one day we learned about it in school, I told him. I felt so close. Then I decided to search the Gothic Grim Reaper of mythology, and the first website read, Demons, Incubus, and Angels. What you need to know. So I clicked on it really fast and skimmed through the article. There were demon incubus called Servation Incubus. They were known to be loyal demons that served death himself, and were often made from evil rituals, and sacrifice made to death. Servation Incubus cannot die, although they can be sent to the underworld permanently after a modern exorcism. They are known to be immortal, serve death, and feed off human insides. I paused. The floor beneath me dropped from under me. I had to eat people? I asked myself. What? But how? Why? Keep reading, Charles' voice brought me down from my head, floating off. Oh yeah, so I kept reading. You can also get rid of an incubus that serves death by calling a guild master, and also known as a grief hunter. Incubus are known to come to Earth only to possess, use their psychic powers for evil, or to obtain superhuman strength and immortality. I couldn't read anymore. My heart sank into my chest. I would literally have to eat another human being to not die. I would have to kill, just so I could live. How could I live with myself? We sat on the bed in silence for a moment. Neither one of us knew what to say. Maybe it's wrong, Charles tried to comfort me. But silently I knew it was true. I had tried eating everything but people. I was scared and really feeling hopeless and lost. But at the same time, I had to fight off my tears because I wasn't weak. I was a demon. Author's notes. I could not tell where to end this chapter. I guess I should tell you guys this book might get funded to get published or whatever. But I think book 1 will be changed to Jason's body. That sounds cool. Anyways, I guess I will see you guys next week. # stay tuned for more. Chapter 8. We stood in my room. Charles stood across from me as we waited. I can't do it, I pouted. But Charles insisted we waited for me to try harder. You can. Just think about it. I don't know, trying to possess someone. What would you do? How would you do it? He asked quietly. I had to admit the fact that he was standing across the room without a shirt was pretty distracting. But I was also very scared to even try. I mean, what if I hurt him on accident? I didn't know my own strength lately. I looked back at him with a deep sigh, and we made eye contact. So I closed my eyes to try again. All of a sudden, the light started to flicker. As I peered across the room, the flashing lights reminded me of a horror scene. You're doing good. Now just try to take over, Charles said. I tried, but nothing worked. The lights kept flashing and I was scared, but we decided to stop because the house was starting to shake. We gave up and sat on the couch downstairs. I couldn't believe it. I was a demon. After a while, my stomach began to hurt, and before I could complain, Charles said, let's go get you food," and stood up promptly. His confidence and smile made me feel a little bit better, but I knew it was only going to get us into trouble. "Where are we going?" I finally asked after driving for at least 10 minutes. "We're getting you food." "This is stupid," I protested. "I'm going to put you in danger. And plus, I don't want to eat." Charles said nothing. "You got to," he finally said. Hearing his grown-up voice, he was really convincing he was being a man about this. And even though I was only 18 and he was 19, we did have to make grown-up choices. Well, but where? I sighed. And who? For a second I couldn't believe I dared to ask. "There's an old man named Harold Baker. He lived on the outside of town and he used to be a teacher," he sighed. "He's an alcoholic. He used to beat his wife and kids for 8 years. The school found out and fired him. He's been living alone since she finally left him," he admitted. I said nothing, waiting for him to get to the point. "But it wasn't until he almost beat them both to death," he said solemnly. There was a moment of silence between us. "He deserves to die," he finally confirmed. When we get there, we walked straight to the door and Charles told me to wait here. He walks around the back and I wait at the door. How's he supposed to get me inside? I couldn't come in unless I was invited in. I didn't really know, but after 5 minutes I was getting tired of waiting. I let out a deep sigh and started to get annoyed. 3 minutes later, he opened the door. Looking down on me, we locked eyes. You can come inside," he said. He grabs my hand and leads me down a dark hallway and through the living room. He's in the back den. He's drunk, of course. "This will be easy. Just go in and do what you have to do, and do not feel bad," he told me. I nodded my head in agreement, even though he wasn't looking. I was so hungry at this point, guilt was the last thing on my mind. Author's note. Next week, we eat somebody. Hashtag I fell in love with the Reaper. Chapter 9. It was a total slaughter. Before he even got a chance to scream, I was ripping out his jugular with my teeth. You couldn't imagine how bad it got. I couldn't even comprehend what I was doing. I started to feel bad as his now lifeless eyes looked back at me and wondered why would Charles set him up. But I had to clear my head. Enough for me to feel better. Enough for me to eat. I felt bad as the now lifeless body with no entrails lay there. No time to think about what I had done. I had eaten. And now I felt better. But it was too late for him. I took a deep breath and started to return to the living room where Charles waited for me. But something stopped me dead in my tracks. I realized the dark house was creepy and old and had been there probably before I was even born. But all of a sudden the eeriness washed over me in a new way. The door was left open. I focused in. I could let my thoughts scramble. And ran out the door. Down the hallway and back to the living room. To my shock, there had been a fight and everything in the living room that was once in a tiny, neat order had been destroyed. "Charlie?" I called. I was unafraid that he would have been lingering in the dark. of what could have been lingering in the dark. But it was too late. I started calling his name, but with every second no one answered, I began to beg. After pacing back and forth in a small, now destroyed living room looking for answers, I then hear a loud crash from behind me. It was Charlie. I could smell him. But when I turned around, someone had thrown his now lifeless body on the coffee table, smashing it, leaving the body lifeless on the floor. I ran to him in tears. Hovering over him, I began to try to check to see if he was still breathing. But all the signs pointed to no. I cried and began to panic. When I heard a footstep, one step in too late, I looked up and there was a man in a black mask wearing all black with a gun pointed to my head. I growled. I didn't hear him. I wouldn't if I was you, I said, half warning him. That wouldn't hurt me. He said nothing for a moment. Bet this one will, he confirmed and pulled the trigger. Author's note. I have so many evil plans for this manuscript. P.S. I'm not posting this until I have edited these last chapters. And also I'm not posting until I write at least 10 chapters. And I need to edit the manuscript too. So leave me a good review on Google. Chapter 10. When I met Death, it was kind of more confusing than you think. I saw him in fear and stood to my feet and managed to stop crying long enough to realize that I had died. And not only that, I got my boyfriend killed. And there stood the Reaper to take me home. But he said nothing. When I looked up, it hit me. It was the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen. There stood the most handsome, human-looking man standing at almost 6 feet tall, broad shoulders, and a strong build. But at the same time, he looked young and happy. He looked just dead enough to let you know he was dead, but handsome enough to still show a human kind of touch. "I'm your Reaper," he spoke, pulling down a mask he was wearing above his head, but hidden in the hood of his black cloak. "You can come with me." The mask he was wearing was revealed to be a mask of a skull, as if it was a real skull made into a mask. It made me flinch for a second, and I didn't realize how scared I was until I realized I had looked away and couldn't make myself look back. He nods his head in confirmation and begins to walk past me. We walked so far, I became more tired than I was afraid, all while I was trying to figure out what I had done. I was eating, and next thing I know, I found Charlie's body and he was dead. I still couldn't believe it. I had lost my boyfriend. We reached what seemed like an old cathedral building that was the opening to a giant graveyard. He stops and turns to me. "You will stay here until your trial," he says in a low voice. "It will only take 3 or 4 days." "Wow, a graveyard," I say sarcastically. "How fitting." So he sends me inside and follows closely behind me. After walking down the old hallway and past the living room, it seemed like an old house, even though the outside looked very different. And into a room with a small bed and TV and a couch on the other side. "This is your room," he says in a low monotone voice. "Stay here." "But wait," I call before he disappears. "What is happening? Why am I on trial?" I ask in a huff. "In death, you are judged by your life actions, whether you get into the afterlife or not, or even become a Reaper." He let out a sigh. "You're on trial because you are being hunted." "So there's an afterlife?" I ask meekly. "And I'm being judged?" I ask. He simply nods yes and says no more. "Then who are you?" I ask solemnly. "I am the Grim Reaper, Xavier Graves." he said, taking off his mask. But you can call me Damien, he says. And so he locked me in the room with nothing to do, nothing to eat, and no bathroom for 3 days. I hated this. I was this powerful being, a demon with actual values, and I was being sentenced to be judged by a council, and I didn't even do anything. It sucked, because I had just figured out what I was. My whole life has been a complete disaster. I couldn't even figure it out as an immortal. I was a gay boy. We get stepped on, spitted on, and completely ignored because we are different. I just wanted for my life to matter, for my life to work out. But now all this comes crashing down on me. Was it my fault Charles was dead? I looked around the room. It was going to be the day of the trial soon. I had to figure something out. I had to do anything to save myself from this disaster, even if it meant seducing a Grim Reaper. Author's note. Next week is getting good. Get ready and leave me another good review. Thanks. Chapter 11. I thought about it for a long time, looking in the mirror as I adjusted my subtle pink tie. I could just attack the weird Reaper as soon as he comes and lets me out and escape. You know? Getting to really see how strong a Grim Reaper really is. But I couldn't. No. My plan had to be a lot more smarter than using my bare strength. I had to use my intuition. He quietly comes into the room. Before I could really question why he was here, he actually spoke. When you speak to the council, have respect. But also don't be afraid to voice your opinion. It might help. So I said, I've got nothing to be afraid of. And I don't plan on holding back because I'll look bad. You can't just go up there spitting and screaming, he said, after adjusting himself by leaning over to his right leg. I won't actually. Wait, why do you care? I asked him in a huff. There's a time and place for everything. They may not even be planning on judging you that harshly. But either way, it's still a trial, I answered harshly. But you never know. They can make you one of us. Then he realizes what he said and shut up. What do you mean? They don't know you're an immortal. Author's note. The title of the book is I Am Very Gay, and this is my gay story fanfiction manuscript. Don't hate on me, okay? I'm doing everything I can, so leave a comment on your favorite chapter so far. Chapter 12. We waited 20 minutes before the council actually showed up. And each one appeared to be different forms, but each one a Reaper. We are here to judge you on behalf of your life encounter. There was a pause of silence. We will take all good deeds in your life into consideration. But if you've done poorly, then we will place our verdict onto you. And only you can take account for your troubles caused. Understand? I said nothing. Very well. Let's begin. The lights dimmed and the screens hanging above the council lit slowly. Orchestra music started to play and a flash of my life passed by. My childhood, growing up on Darren Street, playing soccer for a year, beat up the school bully, old pictures of me with my toy drum set, my grandma holding me as a kid, all of it. Flashing by in second clips, causing the whole thing to speed by. My early teen years, pictures of me and my parents starting school, my dad leaving, crying to my mom as I came out of the closet, all of it. Then it ended after about 3 minutes or so. And it isn't how life is. One day you're here. Isn't that how life is? One day you're here, then one day it feels like it's sped by. Now these actions in your life are good actions that we will judge. The judge spoke, but it all faded into a muffled noise in the background. I looked around and there was the Reaper standing there. We locked eyes for a second and I snapped out of it. I said, "What do you have to say for these actions?" the second judge said. I said nothing. Fine. Then all of these deeds, whether good or bad, will be thrown out. Final decision? The third judge said. Anyone think we should spare this young man? She asked. No one raised their hand. Does anybody think we should send this mortal to life in the afterworld? Punishment for his actions? The fourth judge interrupted. And everyone slowly raised their right hand. A single tear ran down my face. But I said nothing. And everyone slowly raised their right hand. Fine. You will be sentenced to an eternity in the underworld, the first judge announced. But wait, someone interrupted. Everyone gasped at this. We all turned our heads to see the Reaper now standing interrupting the trial. But you didn't even take the time to come up with a verdict, he announced angrily after a moment. Whether we came to a verdict or if we did take a break to determine the sentence, it would be the same, the third judge said. But that's unfair, he announced right back. Do you dare stand against the trial? The third judge demanded. Don't defend me, I stood up. Whether you determined me to be innocent or guilty, you all knew my fate already. I looked back at the Reaper. That wouldn't change anything. The crowd erupts in chatter. We all sit in 6 feet tall guards pick me up. As I stood, I wanted so desperately to look back at the Reaper. Why did he try to protect me? He didn't care. Or at least he shouldn't have. They took me away to a dark, evil-looking cave. It was really a cell. But I guess whatever I called it didn't matter. I had been sentenced to the underworld. What was going to happen to me? Author's note. Can you believe I haven't taken a break yet? OMFG. I basically am a god. LOL. I've been staying up all night and haven't wrote a single word in weeks. OMFG. But don't worry, the climax is coming. Soon? We may never know. Chapter 13. Days passed and nothing happened. I was scared and restless, and the handcuffs and bathroom were a nightmare. When would this end so the torture could start? I was resting on my cot, asleep, when a guard woke me up. I'm gonna let you out now. You ready? He grunted. It was strange, too. No one around here had normal eyes. They were pitch black depths of evil. Nothing behind the eyes but coldness. It made me miss my home. But I knew I would never return there. We were traveling to the underworld in 3 days. We would be there. So the 3 guardsmen would drop me off in the hands of Hades himself. I heard from eavesdropping before. They put me in a covered wagon, still in handcuffs, in a little cage. I struggled to get comfortable and we didn't even plan on leaving anytime soon, so I wasn't too comfortable. Hours later, when I was so exhausted, I couldn't see straight. The first guardman sat in the front, but I had my back to him and wasn't interested in turning to see what exactly he was doing. That was taking too long. I wrote in silence. Nothing really interested me since I got my sentence. Sentenced to the underworld. I didn't have much to say. Honestly, I kept telling myself it would be over soon, but when would it be over? After a fucking eternity? But anyways, I wasn't being strong for myself. But I was being strong more so because it was the only thing I knew. I wasn't scared of what was going to happen to me. I was scared of how it was going to end. My life fell apart after that night. I became a demon, and I didn't have time to think that was over. Was I strong enough to take these guards and escape? The thought tempted me. I didn't know I could die until about a week ago. But the reassuring thoughts that I could use my strength tempted me. Two days had passed. I didn't know if we were almost there or not, but I was starting to feel hungry. The tempting thought to break free tempting me the whole time, and I didn't know if I should even try or bother, or just accept my fate and just take my place in the underworld. All of a sudden, a loud rattling noise took over. The covered wagon pulled over. I heard the guards mumbling to each other, unsure if they should stop the wagon or not, but we ended up pulling over. Only one guard got out to see what it was. After a moment of rattling, there was a loud noise and a scream. The guards looked at each other and one quickly climbed out to see what happened. After a moment of silence, there was nothing. No noise, no guard, no warning, no anything. So the guard began to take off driving the wagon as fast as he could. What was going on? Could it be robbers? This far out? No way. I'm not that lucky. And then a loud thud noise came from above us as someone landed on top of the covered wagon speeding up. I looked up at the shadowy figure walk towards the front of the wagon, yanking the guard out in one quick motion before he could even scream. He was gone. The wagon crawled to a stop. Then the shadowy figures abruptly jumped down, coming to the back of the wagon straight to me, revealing it was the REAPER who saved me. Author's notes. Thank you guys for all the love and support. Summer just started and I forgot, so I'm celebrating this break and I'm updating twice this week. Leave me a good review on Google. Okay, bye. Chapter 14. You don't know what you've done, I argued. At this point, you're really doing something that you can't take back. Now I know what you want, but I don't feel the same, I screamed. But he said nothing. Look, you can still take me back before you get in trouble, I started. But yet everything in me was telling me to pull him closer. I'm taking you back to the realm of the living, he said. There you'll be safe. But I have to stay with you, he explained. Then I knew exactly what he was saying. He rescued me. He rescued me because he knew from when our eyes first met, he loved me. And I knew. I knew I wasn't capable of love since I became an immortal. But when I met the Reaper, I was in a safe place. Fine, I answer. When we get back to the human realm, I will have no powers for the first 3 days. I don't know what to expect, but they will send someone after us. It's fine, we can hide at my grandma's house. She's never there. Great. We'll have a safe place as long as we are careful. On the 3rd day, I will be able to protect us. 3 days? Who will protect us until then? Well, you, he admitted. After traveling until it was fully night, then he pulled out his scythe that he was wearing on his back and put his mask on. He sliced the air, creating a portal that we went through. We traveled through and I stumbled out of the portal. When I turned out, the Reaper boy was on his knees. I ran to him quickly to see if he was okay, and I helped him stand up. He put his scythe on his back and we walked. When he got there, after what seemed like walking for miles, he had to break in through a window in the backyard. The house was relatively nice and almost a manor. My grandma never cared for it. She would rather travel. I told him to get comfortable on the couch in the living room while I make us both some tea and heat up some cold breakfast food we could eat. I wasn't sure if he actually ate, but I knew it would be nice to drink some tea. So to my surprise, he did eat, and we quickly sipped our tea and said nothing at first. But then he looked at me. I quickly looked down and started fiddling with the spoon in my cup. I felt like this around a boy since I hadn't felt like this around a boy since Charles. But I wanted to forget that. When I looked back up, he was looking away, so I found myself staring at him. His perfect light brown hair, his chiseled face, his very built body, it was perfect. When he did start a conversation, his image was stuck in my head, even though I had stopped looking. I wouldn't look back up for my tea. So when he did start a conversation, he cleared his throat and simply admired me, staring at my lips, as if a reminder to actually pay attention to him was what I was saying, not to think constantly about mine. We small talked until he finally said what he was thinking the entire time. So how does it feel? He asked me. It hurt at first. I was so fucking hungry I couldn't take it. But that was just the beginning. Honestly, it kind of rocks, I admit it. I get to see past all this and into the next for, well, eternity. But then it dawned on me. Aren't you an immortal, too? I am, he answered. But I could tell he was thinking about something far deeper than living forever. I was born into the human Reaper bloodline. I never lived on Earth, but all my memories point me back to the realm of the living. I never knew why. I'm sorry. The words kind of came out, even though I knew I wasn't really the person who wanted any pity. We talked about it more and more in my power and strength. I even told him about how I saw God who told me to get revenge. So I would. We talked about other things. But my mind couldn't help but wander around and wonder how his lips would taste on mine. So I finally said what I was thinking. So why did you save me? I asked after a moment of sitting in silence. I don't know. Something just drew me to you when I first saw you. I said nothing for a second. Well, if I were you, I wouldn't get your hopes up. I have to find the person who killed my boyfriend. I have to find the bastards who sacrificed me. I wouldn't think you felt any particular way about me. Besides, you aren't gay, so I said. Then I stood up, but before I could walk away, he spoke. But what about? I saved you. I put my entire life on the line for you. He spoke. But I nodded my head. I couldn't let him get his hopes up. When I turned around to debate, he was standing there. And he kissed me. Author's notes. I thought I was published and I got my hopes up, but sadly my writing agent no longer required my services and my book was canned. But don't think it's over. It will never be over. But if you know a literary agent that would be interested in this book, please email me. Until then, I will start another manuscript. I was bored with writing anyway. Please leave a good review. Chapter 15. I'll admit it. It did feel good. After he kissed me, I could not argue. We had 3 days until his powers came back. So 3 days to decide what we were going to do. But when he kissed me, I lost my mind. I couldn't control it. So we had sex. And so, that's what we did for the next 3 days. Had sex, and drink tea, and talk. Small talk. I honestly felt like it was priceless. And mostly I wanted to be present in the moment and know exactly what to say. But I always felt like it needed more and more. The time did pass slowly. When we kissed, I could tell neither one of us wanted it to end. But regardless, we both knew deep down the real journey hadn't even begun yet. So eventually we stopped talking about it and began to wonder what we would do. It had only been 2 days and counting, and we hadn't seen anything yet. It was 11 o'clock at night when we heard a loud, distant crash. Then it was quiet. Suspicious. As the ominous silence crawled into the house. Then a loud boom at the front door and 8 Reapers ran into the house. It was a raid. And as the Reapers raided the house, we both knew we were in a lot of danger. Especially because Damien couldn't get his powers back for another 12 hours. We were in the bedroom after just having sex, and we had just gotten dressed. At the last minute, the raid happened. So luckily, we knew we had a fighting chance if we faced them head on. Boom. A Reaper kicked down the door, and they all rushed in. Damien didn't hesitate to start fighting. The less talking to him, the better. And I was feeling powerful at the thought of having to protect us for 12 more hours. So I was also ready. Author's notes. 15 weeks. I love you, all my little immortal babies, and everybody should post who they ship more because I want to know. Chapter 16. I grabbed the arm of the god and broke his arm as I let out a roar. One look into my eyes and the guards knew to fear me. I growled a furious growl, and they all began to step back in fear. Then I felt it. A sharp pain in my back. But when I looked, the Reaper had come up and stabbed me with his scythe. I tried to let out a growl of anger, but it hurt more than I expected. When he pulled his scythe out, I groaned, and I fall to the floor. Before my eyes closed, I see the Reapers getting tackled by Damien. When I came back, I was completely healed. It still hurt kinda. I definitely still felt where I had been stabbed. Didn't hit me. Where was I? "You're awake," Damien asked me. He sat across from me a few feet away, with his head hanging low. "Yeah, I'm sorry there were so many guards. I knew we didn't stand a chance," I started, but he interrupts me. "It's okay. Everything is okay. We are here now. Safe," he said in a dark, brooding voice. Then I realized he didn't have a shirt on, but it draped over his shoulder, exposing his muscular body. "How do we get out here?" I asked. He still hung his head low, not saying anything. "I grabbed you and fought off those Reapers myself. Then we escaped, and I carried you to this side of town and got my powers about halfway." "How did they know where we were?" I asked him solemnly after a moment. "I don't know. But now I have to protect you. I have my powers, and even though my scythe is gone, I can still protect you," he said. Then I felt this feeling in the pit of my stomach. It was almost like I was grateful that now I had Damon in my life. He understood me. Even though I pushed it away at one time, I was starting to forget it. And right now, I definitely realized I had no reason to. He was quiet, majority of the run, as we tried to make our way out of town on foot. We only had to lure them out of town and kill them. With Damien being one of the best Reapers and me being an immortal, we had an advantage we couldn't waste. Author's notes. Even though I haven't been updating anything for long, I want you guys to know I'm writing another manuscript. Thank you so much. I love you all. Chapter 17. I grabbed the Reaper by the throat. I growled. It wasn't much of a fair fight, but we weren't very known to fight fair. I pinned the Reaper to the ground and moved on to the next, all while keeping an eye on Damien. He was fighting two Reapers at once as they gathered and surrounded him. Something in me knew I had to do something. And fast. Or me and Damien would be dead. Or worse, in the hands of the Council of the Dead. I quickly tackled a Reaper in mid-swing as he collapsed to the ground. I sink my teeth into his neck, but he didn't scream. I continued to claw at the Reaper until it all went black. I hadn't killed anyone. One day I was a normal kid going to school and hating my life, but now I couldn't dare look back. I clawed away at the Reaper until all my fear went away. Then I could focus. Remembering that Damon needed me, I turned back to the war, and I ran into it without fear or a single hesitation on my breath. We ran out of town and ended up about 13 miles outside of the city or anywhere remotely close to the small suburb. We rested in a small motel that seemed like it was in the middle of nowhere. but it also seemed like the perfect place to get some rest, like we needed. We rested in the bed in the silence of the darkness that surrounded us. The only light coming from the bathroom light as I just got out of the shower. Damien, on the other hand, still didn't feel safe, so he was on guard watching out for the next group of Reapers. He solemnly told me how the council would agree very soon that they would have to send a higher ranking of Reapers to come after them. And they couldn't risk me having to fight because they would put their lives in danger for sure. I hesitated. And I realized what we had done. Holding my hand in front of my face in the darkness, I couldn't see it. We barely escaped with our lives after one single fight. What would we do then? But something deep within me didn't want to ask him, even though he already had an answer. I want you to leave me here, he spoke softly. I know how that sounds, but the only way they can take us back is if they catch both of us. He says, just trust me. I'll wait here for the next group of hunters. When they find out it's just me, they won't try to kill me, and they won't be able to catch up with you. Do you mean to tell me you want me to just leave you here? I questioned in the air. Trust me, this will work. I will hold them off for as long as possible. But you have to go somewhere safe, he answers after a moment. This isn't about you and me anymore, Jaden. If they catch you, they will hurt you. I can't leave you. And where will I go? Head toward Arizona and catch a bus to Arizona. There you will find an oracle that can help you, he says, but then he pauses as if he thought of something. Jaden, this isn't about us anymore. I couldn't fight him since he made his mind up. Now I had to make it from Colorado to Arizona. I didn't want to feel like he was pushing me away. I knew he just wanted to keep us safe, but he was risking everything for me and I had nothing to give him back. Chapter 18. We didn't have sex that night, even though the tension between us was incredible. The truth is, I was starting to get hungry again, and I couldn't hold it for as long as I did the first time, because of how long I went without eating. So the next morning, we packed my stuff, we wrote down the address to where to go, and he sent me off without debate. I kissed him one last time, hoping I would see him again. So I told him I love you. And he locked eyes with mine. He said he loved me too. The drive to Arizona was lonely. And mostly because I was tired. I was feeling really fed up, running to Arizona from the council and losing Charlie and dying again. None of it had anything to do with me getting revenge. I was almost tempted to run off and go get my revenge, but I couldn't dare hurt Damien. I cared too much. But since he risked his life for me, and we finally said we loved each other, I was feeling really drained, and the only wanted my revenge. Little did I know I would end up face to face with a group of hunters as soon as I stepped off the foot of the bus. I locked eyes with the first hunter. I turned around and tried to look for the bus that I just got off of, but it was already gone. I took a step back off the curb and then realized one was quickly moving in. The silver robes moved in a flash of shadowy dust like smoke that moved in every motion. As they circled around me, I thought about trying to dash for it, but it was already too late. I thought about fighting. But in public, there were a lot of innocent people around, and I couldn't exactly survive trying to fight off 5 hunters. I didn't know what to do. All of a sudden, a low growl started in the bottom of my throat. My head and my heart was pounding, and my eyes began to glaze over, till my pupils were covered in black. I growled, "If you hurt Damien, I'll kill all of you," I growled. I was seeing red when I tackled the first hunter off his feet. As I fell onto the ground with him, I felt a bunch of sharp pains in my back and ribs. The other hunters were clawing at me as I charged one of them down. I let out a roar as I swiped around but missed as the hunters jumped back. I jumped off the hunter onto another and clawed and slashed away at the hunter until he was dead. The pain from the hunter's sharp nails stabbing me in my back was a bitch. When I couldn't take it anymore, instead of jumping at the next hunter, I jumped 12 feet onto my feet and took off running in a flash. I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. I had nothing to lose. I had to lose the hunters who were close behind me and make it through the city and find the oracle. I had to do it for Damien. I had it to end this fight, to end this stupid chase. Chapter 19. I ran and ran, flashing through the city in an ultimate speed. It was amazing. The hunters could even keep up. But then again, hunters were meant to hunt. I cut corners sharply, trying to save as much of my breath as I could, as I knew I had to lose them before I reached my limit. But I kept going. Even though I didn't know where, I kept running. I ran down an alley and felt a deep claw of nails dig into my muscle and my shoulder. I let out a scream of pain. But I knew my body would heal anyways. I turned around all of a sudden and swiped at the hunter. It flew backwards as it was closer to me than I thought and vanished in the air, turning to dust. I waited for another hunter to jump out at me, but there was still a calm silence. I tried to remember to take deep breaths, like when I realized I had social anxiety in the 8th grade and started to have anxiety attacks almost every other day. I couldn't think of a better reason to be anxious right now, but I had to make it to the oracle. had to find Damien. We had risked everything just to get this far. I had to do this. I dashed away in a flash at my newfound speed and ended up getting pretty far, but nowhere close to where I should have been. I finally reached the house of the Oracle, a 2-story house in a quiet neighborhood. It was weird, but almost fitting, that the Oracle of the spiritual world wanted to live such a small, quiet life. I walked up to the sidewalk leading to the front door as my heart pounded in my ears. I didn't know what I was doing, or what to say, or if I should tell her the whole story. Maybe she already knew. But I had to find someone to help us, and fast, or Damien could end up. Well, that part I didn't want to think about. As the door opened, I realized how far into my thoughts I had been. There stood a woman about 5'7" with long, jet black hair. She was pale and had thick, almost white or light pink lips, and wore a silk black lace robe over a plain black shirt and a pair of ripped black jeans. She looked like she was only in her late 20s, although I could be wrong. But I knew, without a doubt, it was her. She was the Oracle. I knew, she started to say, but slightly hesitated for a moment. I knew you were coming. She smiles a gentle, kind smile and invites me in. We have so much to talk about. Now come in, quickly. I'm afraid we don't have much time. We sit in her living room, which was giant and covered with picture frames. No TV, and a set of beautiful windows, letting the light shine in all the room, which fell in the center of the windows. So tell me what brings you here, she starts. She could tell I was comfortable. Tell me your story. It all started about a year ago, when I was murdered. I started and confessed the complete story to her. It felt easy, and honestly, it made me kind of relieved to talk about it. I see. The council is searching for you, and they don't know you're an immortal, she answered after a moment. She pauses as I take deep breaths to try to be calm. I couldn't help but want to panic knowing the hunters are after me. I will feel terrible if they found me here. It could ruin everything. Well, you'll be interested to know that your story's not over yet. You will survive this. But something tells me that you should know this chase is not between you and the council. You saw God that night. And before he came back, he told you something. This is because you are on a mission to do what you need to do. But people from your past and the council, even your lover Damien, they cannot distract you from what needs to be done. I nodded politely to fight the urge to look away as our eyes locked. She wasn't telling me something, and I knew she was a bit nervous. You have someone from your past, she says, interrupting my thoughts. And you need to focus on getting even, so that karma may lay balance over your life. And then what? I answer. And who? She nodded as she gives me a second to prepare. Your lover Charlie is still alive. Chapter 20. A single tear falls down my face. But what? I answer. I don't know what exactly that means to you, but he's actually alive. When you died, your spirits were together until you were separated by the council and you were brought to meet them. She responded slowly, waiting for my reaction. I couldn't believe what she said. My head began to feel dizzy, and I couldn't help but feel like throwing up. I'm confused, I slowly whisper. You stayed together until you were taken. The council has sought after you for a reason, and something is telling me that you are the missing piece of the story making sense, she tells me. I think you were caught in the middle of something bigger than you. I had so many questions at the point. What did she know? How long had it been since Charles had came back? Where was he? Was he safe? My head was spinning. Where is he? I demanded. I have to get to him, I demanded again. He was on his way to find you in Colorado, but he lost you in New Mexico, the oracle told me. I stood up immediately and locked eyes with the oracle. I should thank you, but I never got your name. I told her, extending out my hand, and she stood up too and couldn't hide the regret in her face. But there's more, she tried, but in my head it was already too late. She looks me deep in my eyes and sighs when I don't let her in. There's been a disruption in the balance of life and death, and you are in the middle, I'm afraid, she says. But I made my mind up. I needed to find Charles. So I left in a blur of regret and finding back tears. My boyfriend had been in total danger without me, because of me, and I didn't even know it. I walked straight out of the house with the plan. Well, kinda. In my head, but I didn't know one thing first. How was I gonna find Charlie? Nothing else mattered in my head at that point. I was gonna find him. Everything in me was telling me I needed to find Charlie. He was my safe place in all this current disaster that was going on. I could escape the trackers, find Charlie, and we would be safe. At least deep down I knew he would protect me. And maybe he was looking for me too. Chapter 21. I didn't get very far when I left the oracle's home, before trackers found me. The only thing I could do was remember the words the oracle said to keep me alive, to survive. I ran down the street in a flash of blurring motion, rapidly increasing my speed down the roads where the houses all looked the same. It reminded me of my home, but there was no time for that. I had to escape from my life, or fight, but I was focused. I was in survival mode. When I mustered up the strength to look back after what felt like miles of running, there were no trackers. I was lost and wandered to a busy main street, and down the way, it looked like I found a small outlet, or a small string of stores. with innocent people walking by and a bench. I couldn't resist sitting down to rest. It felt like the last time. I couldn't even actually do so was before I was immortal. I checked my pockets and I only had $120 in my pockets. I would have to wander around until I could find somewhere to sleep and eat. That was all I could spend it on. Eventually, I found a cheap motel I could rest. And after spending hours trying not to cry or panic or feel overwhelmed by paranoia, I finally fell asleep. When I did wake up, the day had passed. I only had 2 more days and I would have no more money after I ate. I found myself meditating on what to do, focusing on what was important. I had to find help. I had to find an ally. There was no way I could do this alone. And unfortunately, I was too far from home and didn't know much about my surroundings. Moving was over. Morning was over. And so I had no time to waste or meditate. So I ended up wandering back to the outlet with the small string of stores and shopping area. And that's when I saw it. It was a small witchcraft store. And I didn't know a lot of answers on what I should do yet, but one thing I did know was that I did, for one, trust the oracle. Maybe someone there could help me. I mean, I've seen total weirder things lately. Deep down, I've been feeling weak lately. At first, I didn't even know my own strength. And then I was forced to run away, all while being on trial and getting sentenced and even being forced to live in a cage. I didn't know who I was. And deep down, I couldn't take one more second of not knowing my own strength anymore. I sigh. I could process the light, sure. I could possess the light, sure. And I could use my strength if I needed it. But I had to face it. In this world of fantasy, I guess, I was only going to face mystical people and powerful creatures. Not having any powers wouldn't necessarily get me very far. And protecting myself? Well, I couldn't do it any more than I could throw a tracker. And let's face it, I had people I needed to protect. Author's notes. I'm back, and don't think I'm going to ease up on posting weekly. New things are coming. Don't give up on me yet. Chapter 22. I was scared at first, I'll admit it, to walk into the witch shop and ask for help. That oracle must have known she would also be put in danger just from my appearance, but asking some strange woman I didn't know to help me and put her whole life in danger? I couldn't do it. But my hand was already at the door, reaching out to push it open. I had to think of something, and I had to think quickly. Welcome, a distant female voice greeted me. Hi. I stuttered for a second. I I need your help, I spilled out. A beautiful woman no older than 30 appeared with with a big smile on her face, saying, "Of course," and led me to the cash register in the back of the store. I stood at the counter as she made her way behind the cash register, and then she greeted me warmly. "Yes, how can I help you?" she asked me warmly. I'm not from here, but can you help me? I need to learn how to summon spirits. I need books to teach me how," I confessed to her. Of course," she said without hesitation. She turned to lead me to the correct book section, and before she does, she looks back at me curiously. I could tell she was sizing me up for why I was there, wondering what I needed. I could tell she figured what she wanted and led me to the books. This is voodoo. This is the voodoo section. I get the feeling this will help you a little more if you ask me, she said, gesturing to the books. I didn't move though. I don't know why, but I didn't. She gets the picture and nods to herself and tells me about voodoo spells I could learn. Not just for protection, but to create power and energy to cast black magic and even death magic. Voodoo is an ancient art form of magic that comes from the motherland of Africa. It can get very dark and mysterious, especially if spirits choose to continue to reveal themselves to you. But also this magic can create and protect such a great light for you, she spoke. She pulls out a big book and hands it to me. This is the Book of Shadows. You can read it and learn from it. In a few weeks, you will be practicing and casting magic, she confirms. I said nothing as I held the book, even though I was grateful for her help, and also didn't want her to grow suspicious, but I couldn't help it. Just something got the best of me. The woman looked from the book to my eyes and sighs. Please tell me, why do you want to learn such magic? She asked. I need to protect someone I love from something bigger than the both of us. Listen, the danger is growing every day, and the less you know, the safer you will stay. Don't lie, she answers after a moment. Did you know that mortals in the human realm stay much safer if they just simply stayed away from magic? But some people just don't have that choice. If you want, I can show you other ways to get help. Maybe call the police, she offers, but I interrupt her. That would never help. I'm too far in now. I can never go back now, I tell her. She says nothing, and then she says, you shouldn't play around in the darkness, or something bad could happen. And why would a young innocent man like you want to be so interested in the art of dark magic? I look away for a second, thinking this was a bad idea after all. I'm more dead than you think, I'll tell her in a mutter. Then I could tell she thinks about what she wants to say for a moment, and then she tells me, there's an empire in Montana. There, the undead empire summons deities from the realm of God's gates. They might be the ones who can help you. I think about it. I don't have a way to Montana, I sigh. There's a girl. She walks by every other day in the morning. If you wait for her, she can help you, she says, persisting that she means well. I can tell she does, but that's not going to help me save Damien. I buy the Book of Shadows and leave in silence after not knowing what to say. Chapter 23. That night I traced along as I read along with the Book of Shadows. It started off mostly with instructions on how to cast spells. Burning paper, keeping jars, praying, meditating in the sunlight, even casting ashes. It was almost dizzying with all the different things witches cast spells for, especially because I didn't know why most of them were so common. Then I found what I was looking for. Summoning spirits with meditation. I skimmed through most of the paragraphs, deciding pretty soon it was way too much to read in one night. But I did plan to go back and read it. The book said to call to the spirits. You had to chant an incantation and repeat it about 3 or 4 times. Seemed easy enough. I turned off all the lights, as the motel room was only lit from the cracked door of the bathroom. There was only about 3 or 4 incantations in this section, but I knew I would need more. I had to practice as much as possible to get used to the magic summoning. The book said that once you summon a spirit, whether it be a ghost, spirit, or evil spirit, you have to catch it or possess it quickly or risk the spirit escaping into the human realm. Rime vos actu deservante id nocturnum, I said. For a second, I almost expected something to happen. But remember that I had to chant. Chant. Focus. Rime vactu octe deservate ic nocturnum, I repeated. My eyes were closed, but I listened in the stillness of the night in my bedroom for anything to happen. So I kept chanting. Rime vos actu deservante id nocturnum, over and over again. Author's notes. So as we grow closer to the halfway point, we get closer to the first arc of the story. So I hope you guys are ready for some deep action and some crazy adventure. Also, please check out my official website where you can find and buy all kinds of new fandom content, background information, and canon, storyline. But please check it out, because you never know if you'll find something for free. Chapter 24. Even though I couldn't believe I was doing this, I waited for the mystery girl around the outlet to try to convince her to come with me to Montana. I don't know why I was so self-conscious or embarrassed, but something deep down in me told me this was a bad idea. 20 minutes passed and I was tired. But I was fine enough to keep waiting. Then another 15 minutes passed and I was starting to get tired. Maybe I could just use my newfound summoning powers on my own and do what I can to try to get back to home and fix everything that I had broken. But at the same time, something about this plan seemed right, like it was the right thing to do. So eventually I got tired of pacing back and forth in the same spot, so I began to walk over to the wood shop. From behind me I heard a woman scream, and people started to run. When I turned around I knew exactly why. Hunters. And they were in broad daylight. I was starting to get the sense that the council was starting to not care anymore on how they found me. And pretty soon, they would want me dead more than they wanted me captive. I took a deep breath as I started to summon some spirits, but as soon as the people who were running away from the grim started looking, shadowy creatures that stopped and looked, I let out a deep sigh. It wasn't the right time. Next thing you know, I was running full speed out the outlet and away from the innocent bystanders. It was different today. I wanted to lure the trackers away this time. This time I wanted to fight. Chapter 25. I lured the trackers out and away from the outlet filled with people. But I realized for a second too late I ran into a dead-end street not too far from the wood shop. Trapped in a dead-end alley that was too small to fight in. And when I turned around, the trackers had already started moving in on me. I was stuck, with no chance or no choice but to fight. I had to do something. I growled intensely as I bared my sharp teeth and let out a roar as I charged in to fight. I ran in, and as I got close, the trackers drew their scythes. I had to admit it. It did slip my mind that they would have weapons, and that didn't stop me. I grabbed the first tracker before he could swing his scythe, grabbing it out of the air as the blade came toward me. I looked, and we locked eyes for a second. Even behind their masks, they didn't scare me. So I threw the scythe and grabbed the tracker by the cloak and lifted him off his feet. I let out an intense loud roar as I felt the two sharp blades from the other two trackers stab me in my back and ribs. So in my instinct, I flung the Reaper across the alleyway and I was stabbed again in the ribs. I had to think fast. I slashed around with my sharp nails and could feel myself fuming. But that wasn't helping. I couldn't fight off the two trackers left. Their strength was far past my own, even if I was using all my anger and rage to fight. Then before I could get a grip on losing the fight, all of a sudden the first tracker I got rid of was back. I was throwing punches as hard as I could, but most of them were landing on false hope. It wasn't even helping me in the slightest bit. Before I knew it, each had my arms forcing me to my knees. Then the third tracker grabbed me by my neck from behind. It was over. My immediate assumption was that the council no longer demanded I be brought back, but they would be satisfied with the body, and finding me dead or alive was their only option if it meant their lives over mine. They were going to kill me here and now. I closed my eyes tightly and tried to embrace it being over. But before anything could happen, a loud screeching scream blasted through the alley, throwing everything around and pounded against my ears to pound. I shut my eyes in pain, and the trackers let go of my arms, and I covered my ears in pain. I look up, and there was the three trackers that were now backing away started to run. But before they could get anywhere, they exploded under the pressure of the loud screeching noise. And the loud pounding noise faded, leaving me dizzy. I looked around and locked eyes with the girl wearing all black with ripped jeans and long black hair, barely pushed out of her face. That went all the way down to her hips. She was about 5'7", thick black eyeliner, and wore a bored look on her face. She was the girl from the witch shop. Author's note. Not gonna lie, I'm pretty exhausted, but leave a review so I feel better. Chapter 26. She starts to walk away after confirming to herself that I was okay. But unexpectedly, I caught up with her. Wait, you're the girl that always shows up to the witch shop, right? I asked, reaching out to her. But she didn't turn around. No way, she says as she kept walking. I followed her back to the outlet, trying to convince her. Please, I need your help. I was killed with my boyfriend, and the death council judged me. They sentenced me to the underworld, but I fell in love with the Reaper and he saved me. I confessed. The witch told me you pass by every day, but you never go inside. Only you can help me. That's stupid. Why would the council sentence you to the underworld? What did you really do? She accused. And besides, what's in it for me? Please. I was supposed to find my boyfriend because he's still alive. Can you take us to Montana to the undead empire, I beg? I can't help you, she says. And besides, it only seems like everything you touch ends up in danger. That's why you don't trust boys, she says. At this point, we're passing the witch shop and I'm out of time without convincing her. But then she stopped and turned around to face me. I can't help you, I'm sorry. So stop following me. I think I get it, I accused. You don't trust me because you're a lesbian. She says nothing, looking at me wide-eyed for a second, and she agrees to go to Montana with me. Author's notes. The Banshee Girl and the Gay Incubus Demon Boy. Who would have thought we would have made it this far? Stay tuned for more. Leave a good review and share on all social media. Chapter 27. The drive was long and hard to deal with. We had to find Damien and Charlie, and I had to convince the Banshee girl, whose name was Kikyo, and we drove back to California to find Damien. I didn't know how I would find them, and I didn't know what I would say, but I knew we would all find answers. We would find the undead empire and find help. So that was the plan. I told Kikyo everything. How Charles died because of me. How I fell in love with the Reaper that later saved me. The confusion, the self-hatred, and how it all happened so fast. I told her how hadn't faced becoming an immortal yet. How I was constantly struggling and feeling alone, and yet the boys simultaneously made me feel okay and how I needed to get revenge. She comforted me, saying they might both understand, and given the current situation, no one is in any place to judge you. She was right. But at the same time, in the back of my head, I didn't know why God kept putting me in these situations. They were too hard for me. I couldn't deal with it. And later, because it was nonstop, but she was right to solve the problem one step at a time. First, we had to find Charles and Damien. Then find the undead empire. Then we had to fight the Council of the Dead. Chapter 28. We drove and drove until we made it back to LA, where we found Charles first. I got out of the car and ran to him, and we kissed as soon as we greeted, which I regretted. Honestly, I feel like I told myself before to refrain from showing either one of the boys affection because it wouldn't be fair to the other. I didn't even know how I would tell them about the other one, but I knew I had to. While we searched for Damien, I confessed everything to Charles. He's the one that saved me after I was sentenced to the underworld. Even when he didn't have to, he saved me. I told Charles, who seemed to have a ton of questions. You kissed? He asked innocently. What else did you do? He asked after a second. Why do we have to go and find him? He asked. His range of questions only showed me his jealousy was peaking rapidly, and if I let him trail on his own, I would be the blame. If you cared about me, then you would be happy. He saved me, I said, looking at Kikyo, who shrugged me away. He saved me, Charlie. He's the reason why I'm still alive, why I'm still here. So I should like him? He let out. I'm not saying be his best friend, but when we find him, you have to be nice. Please just understand we all have to work together, I led him on. He said nothing for a minute and my heart was pounding. All while Kikyo said nothing but just drove. When will you choose then? Him or me? Until I decide, I said. Chapter 29. Finding Damien was a lot easier. We found him in the outskirts of Bakersfield. I immediately get out of the car and ran to him. He had been walking for days and didn't know how to find me, or even find his way to Arizona. But everything was okay, I reassured him. Everything was fine now that I was back in his arms. He locked eyes. We locked eyes for a moment.